ethically, I feel like the underground should be allowed to experiment.
Yeah.
Like in the non-commercial realm, like art, just let art be art. Otherwise we wouldn't have Banksy and hip hop and that kind of thing.
Go. Let's go.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to the show. We got an on-the-road version of the show right now. We're in Park City, Utah. I spent this week in Park City talking a lot about AI and music and what's going to happen with AI music and what could happen and how we could impact it and how we can make positive things and make great things. And I've been spending a lot of time looking at a lot of different AI music programs. And so when I met the guys that are on the show right now, I was very impressed with the work they're doing. And I think what's really unique about them is that they're both musicians creating AI music programs. So I know a lot of people feel uncomfortable or upset about AI and AI music, and that's totally understandable. As a drummer, I get it. But I want to talk about it, and I want to talk about it a lot because I feel like I want everyone to pay attention, right? You need to pay attention to what's actually going on in the world, because turning your head away from it isn't going to do anything, or just being upset about it isn't really going to do anything. So I think to have the knowledge is awesome, and to at least know what's going on in the world can give you a great perspective, and then you can make your own decisions on what you want to do or not do, if you're for something, if you're against something, whatever it may be. So you got to pay attention. I started boxing last year. My boxing coach always tells me, yo, if you're going to get punched in the face, look at the punch. You want to watch the punch hit you in the face, because if you go like this and you're like, oh, then you're going to get your ass beat to the ground. They're going to punch you in the back of the head. They're going to knock you to the floor, and you're going to be like this. Same thing with AI music. If you're a musician, songwriter, whatever, pay attention, look at it, use it, try it out, like see what the tools are, because it is here and it's not going away. So once again, just be hip to it, pay attention, right? So with that being said, I want to introduce you to my guests today, who are both musicians, and they are creating, they have created an AI music program that is called Dadabots. Dadabots is very impressive. These guys are metalheads, okay? You can tell when you look at them. So Dadabots is an AI system that creates original music through neural networks and machine learning. It is able to generate new songs and beats in the style of various artists and genres. They also have the longest continual stream on YouTube called Relentless Doppelganger that you should totally check out. I personally also love another one of their live streams that's called Fuck You. Phoqueuue. Is that how you spell Q? Yeah. These guys are writing or creating programs to write wild music, and Relentless Doppelganger has been live streamed on YouTube since 2019. So they're very early in this whole AI music thing, and it's still streaming right now. You can go and listen to it right now. It's continuing, or it's creating never-ending music. Vice says that Dadabots is an endless stream of mind-bending, genre-hopping music. Futurism says eerily realistic and infinitely playable AI music. And Music Tech says endlessly fascinating outputs that enthrall machine music fans. So I'd like to introduce you to Dadabots.
Thanks, Elmo. We're CJ and Zack. We are the fist in the aforementioned metaphor. Our tagline is eliminating humans from music.
And that was the first thing that I saw of you guys. So when I got asked to speak at this conference about AI music, and I was like, okay, sounds cool. And they showed me who the attendee list was, and I was going through, and I was like, Dadabots. And then I clicked on it, and it said Dadabots eliminating humans from music. I was like, whoa, these guys don't give a right? And then I clicked play on one of the live streams and saw that it was, the one I listened to was like saxophone mathcore, right?
Oh, yeah.
It was Fuck You.
That's the Fuck
right?
You.
That's
Yeah.
fucking, yeah.
And being, a metal kid growing up, always listening to math metal, which then we bonded over Dillinger Escape Plan. So I immediately heard it and I was like, whoa, this is insane. And it's also so different than a lot of the other AI music things that I've been hearing, which is like with Udio or Suno or any of these other platforms that are making like, pop songs, country songs, hip hop songs, whatever. You guys have super technical prog mathcore shit being created through these neural networks that's never ending and really good. Like the quality was incredibly high, and it's like Frank Zappa on speed if he was like extra satanic or something. So, and it was really good. I listened to it for an hour as I was working before I even met you guys, and before I came to the conference. When I was just doing my research, I was like, "Well, I can't wait to talk to these guys."
Oh, cool.
And then we got to the conference, and we did the dinner night one at the conference. And these guys like DJ'd by in real time, saying, "Hey, audience, shout out genres. We're going to create brand new genres right now." So we ended up making genres like underwater samba and like all these other, I don't remember if you...
Difficult listening.
Yeah.
Which we put easy listening in the negative prompt.
Yes. And these guys were creating genres and music that's never been heard before in real time as we were eating dinner in the Waldorf Astoria. Found out later there was rooms above our conference room and they were hearing some wild stuff and probably not too stoked.
A little scared, yeah.
That's really great. But I was immediately just like, whoa. And it was, once again, the output was really high quality. It was cool. And then when I saw you guys and you were talking about your musicians and your air guitaring to things that are happening, I'm like, oh, these guys are actually not just musicians, but very proficient musicians. So a lot of respect there. So I guess my first question for you is, as musicians, why are you creating AI music?
Oh yeah, great question. We're both inspired by Hendrix. I think it was the reason we both started playing guitar when we were like super young.
Yeah.
Right.
And yeah, Hendrix is someone who's like just destroying his instrument as he's playing.
Yeah.
And that just was super imprinted in on me. I'm like, oh yeah, that, which of course that actually becomes metal and noise music and all of that.
Yeah, pushing the limit of what we're already doing beyond what we could even physically do ourselves became a focus. And that's where all the technical stuff comes in. Like we were just interested in glitchy stuff and Dillinger Escape Plan, of course, so like mathcore, like progressive black metal that, you get entranced. But after you listen to it a bunch of times, you can kind of predict it. Like you said, you've learned all of Calculated Infinity on drums, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
And like it doesn't have the surprise like the first time you listen to it, I'm assuming at this point, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And we're like, well, this is just like a perfect album, but like I just want more and more and more. That became this seeking the variation, wanting to just extend stuff this way. I think that was like the first stem of it. And we didn't know it was going to be machine learning or AI or neural nets or any of that. This was like 12 years ago when we were just trying to be like, is there some way to just like chop up audio and do this or create weird loops and do this, traditional remixing techniques.
Yeah.
Eventually we found like a limit with that. And again, we just found the next tool that we could push the limit on, which became machine learning.
Yeah, like the predecessor of the neural synthesis is really granular synthesis. Just starting from a corpus of audio, cutting up in small pieces, and then trying to put it together in an interesting way through statistics and whatever. But the problem with granular synthesis is that it always sounds glitchy, digital. It's great for textures. I use it all the time in like electronic bass music, whatever. But it can't sound organic. You can't make it sound like a band.
Yeah.
And just kind of hitting this limit. I'm like, well, how do we make it organic? We have to kind of push it into this continuous space. And at the time, we were both interns at Berklee College of Music, and I had just finished a computer science degree. So yeah, my two loves were growing up in music and video games. So I'm like, yeah, coding. Let's figure it out. So I was just making computer games to teach music theory and all that. We had just a lot of free time. Zack had been in a touring punk band in high school as a drummer. I think you guys have that in common. And I was producing like metal bands in my high school. They would come over to my house and record them. So it was like all this energy. But like eventually we were like, oh man, being a band is so hard. Like touring, like DIY, you always like lose money. And it's like...
You get in fights with
your
your
bandmates,
van, all that.
Like, what if we just could get rid of all the humans in those bands?
And then just have it be your own thing. So instead of you writing the music, you write the software that writes the music.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
And it wasn't machine learning at first. But then we were lucky to be in the Boston area, where it's just a lot of nerds.
Yeah.
There was
hackathons.
Yeah. Shout out to our friend Travis Laurendine.
Yes, Travis. Yeah. That's right.
Travis.
Yeah. Travis was organizing many of these music hackathons that we were at. And we didn't go to like grad school or anything to learn AI, but we were hanging out with PhDs at these events. Yeah. And just learning from them, just to make weirder and weirder music. And there hit a point. Actually, maybe we should talk about the first hackathon.
The very first hackathon where we created Dadabots.
Yeah.
Before we called it Dadabots or anything.
Yeah, right. What was that project?
Oh, well, it was destroying SoundCloud or infecting SoundCloud with Dadaist remix robots, something to that effect. And it was like these accounts that checked out everyone who followed them. Everyone on SoundCloud has music up, so it took the music from their account, remixed it, commented on their thing like, "Hey, you've been remixed. Come check it out," and then would put it into a new style. And each web bot had its own algorithm. We had one called Shock Shack that just like found all the similar sounding timbral connections and just swapped things out, keeping like a grid of like all the ones are together, all the twos, threes, fours, and the measure are together. Just simple little like processes that we could come up with that way. You made a couple that were like really fractal and weird too.
Oh yeah, like Bonafide Slide Glide Red.
Yeah, what did that one do?
I would do this like sample rate pitch bombs, just like over and over again.
Eventually, we made Auto Chiptune Bot, which was our most popular one. That took any music, country, anything, and turned it into like early video game music.
Nice.
But still, like hitting this wall of like, well, I want it to sound like Dillinger Escape Plan. Like, how do I make it capture the timbre of it?
How do I turn something into Meshuggah?
How do I turn it into Meshuggah?
Yeah.
And finally, just out of this necessity, like there was a GitHub project that dropped from these researchers in Montreal called Sample RNN, and we were at one of Travis's hackathons.
That's actually the first time.
That was it. Yeah, that was it.
That's
South by
awesome.
Southwest.
Yeah, South by Southwest.
South by.
That's right.
I might have even been at that one. I went to a bunch of Travis's hackathons at South by. Anyways,
those are great. Yeah,
that was great. And so I think we spent most like 36 hours just trying to get it installed.
Sitting in dependency hell, trying to get software to work with other software.
Right, because this isn't like commercial software. It's not even like software anybody's using, except in this one like academic situation.
Yeah.
And so it's spaghetti code. There's no documentation.
Yeah.
But actually we figured it out, and we're actually very lucky because there's so many at that time. But that one was the best at making metal.
Yeah. Interesting.
And it was a deep learning model. It was a neural net.
Yeah.
That you just fed it raw audio. And before that, most of these attempts were using MIDI, and people were trying to make pop music or classical music.
Bach.
Trying to sound like Bach, Beethoven, and the Beatles. Yeah. And we're like, why is everyone trying to make pop music? That's not gonna be interesting. You know, that's regression to the mean.
We can already make pop music.
We can already make pop music. Like we're trying to take music somewhere stranger, right? And we're very inspired by that Mike Patton interview. I think Angel Dust Sessions, where he's like eating a sandwich, and he's like, "Yeah, I think they should let computers take over music because computers are way more fucked up than people, and the more fucked up that music gets, and the further away music gets from music, the better it'll be for music."
Whoa.
And I'm like, yes, that's correct.
Good mantra.
You gotta make it come to life for Mike Patton. Have you showed it to Mike Patton yet?
No.
I haven't had the privilege to yet.
Yeah, I haven't crossed paths.
I was just at Studio 606, the Foo Fighters studio, like the day before I flew here, and they were saying that Mike Patton made a whole album there, and they were showing me some of his stuff. But anyways,
Amazing.
Yeah.
And the Mike Patton Dillinger album, I was a huge fan of. That was what we first nerded out over.
Yes.
But yeah, so and to go to your point earlier about being surprised or shocked or impressed by when you hear a song for the first time, and especially something like Dillinger Escape Plan, who's like a math metal band that we were all into, and especially myself as a young drummer, I would hear it and be like, what are these patterns? Can't figure out like where all these stabs are and the time signatures. And then so the first time you hear it, you're in shock. And then every time I would hear it, I was just trying to figure it out and then trying to learn it, and trying to learn it and trying to learn it. And then you finally get it. Then when you get it, you're like trying to get it better and better and tighter. And then can I solo over it or can I whatever, right? So it's really interesting to think, because I know you guys now are known especially for making these like endless live streams of music. So it's not just making AI music like with Suno or Udio. They're like, here's your 1 minute song or your 3 minute song max, right? But you guys are making, I mean, literally a song that's been created and generating since 2019 and is still going. It's still going in 2024 right now.
Multi-year compositions.
Multi-year compositions. And so it is, I've never even thought about the option of never-ending surprise of listening to a song before. That's wild.
That's right. Yeah, and Calculating Infinity was that album for me also.
Yeah.
Where I learned to play it on guitar all the way through, and because it's so chaotic, the first 10 listens, like you don't even know what's happening.
Yeah.
It's the same arc, and then eventually you learn how to play it.
Yeah.
And now it's a speed run.
Yeah.
Like Matt Dryhouse calls, like even listening to it like as a speed run.
You can't even tell. You don't even think if it's intentional the first time you listen to it.
I know. Yeah, you're right.
You're like, this has to just be chaos, and you're like, no, this is intentional.
Right. So tight.
Yeah, it's so tight. Oh wow.
Yeah. Recently, I got to talk to Ben Wyman. He's like, "Yeah, I just wrote it in my toilet,
Wild.
dinking around
It's
on
the
my
guitar
guitar."
player for That's crazy.
And
So really, only AI music could do something like that. A human could never, obviously, make a never-ending song.
yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And the loss of surprise is actually tragic. Like that 100th listen of the album.
Yeah.
And actually, what really pushed me over the edge here was a Salvia Divinorum experience I had. So what I oftentimes do, I would smoke it. It lasts 20 minutes. It's a very strong hallucinogen.
Yep.
And I would listen to Meshuggah or Dillinger.
It's intense.
And because there's this sort of like time hallucination that it does, where you start visualizing the probability trees of the music. Like you listen to a song like Meshuggah's Eye, where you're hearing the same riff, like doing all the like infinite like variations of the same riff, and like I'm like almost visualizing the Markov tree of that riff, of like all the variations it could be as like a high dimensional shape. And it's like that experience. I'm like, wait, like we should just make music kind of like this, as like not as a fixed medium, but as a probability tendency that just unfurls.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, we start like even before neural nets, we were trying this with maze metal.
Right, creating scripts that could create like loop points with probabilities and things of songs. And it seemed clear to me when like iTunes and streaming and different things like that came out that we're just like modeling the record industry still. Like the albums are just a square. It's a fixed like 3-minute song that was made for the radio. But there's like so many more things that can be done with computers and the internet when you're on the other side.
For sure.
And connecting the audience to the performer in a way that isn't just passive consumption anymore. And I think that's one of the things that we were seeking out in the early stages of all this.
So to break it down for a musician, songwriter, whoever that's listening to this podcast that's not an engineer, like what is a neural network?
Oh, yeah, great question. So when you train a generative model, it's really just a probability distribution. It's like a coin is the simplest one. You flip it, you get heads or tails. This, you flip it and you get like one outcome. And in this case, like a full song, or in our live streams, it's like some probability of what's going to come next.
And with sample RNN, our first model we used, that's just the samples in the waveform, predicting all those samples in the waveform.
Right.
They have methods now where it's like a compressed audio instead of the raw audio. And so it's trying to pick, where do I either go in the waveform or where do I go in this like musical compressed space next?
Right. It's learning it based off of the context. Based on what just happened, like, do I bring the amplitude up, down, or same?
Yeah.
Right? And it almost seems like that would never work.
Yeah.
And then you just throw a bunch of compute at it for a week and it works, astonishingly.
Listening to an album like 30 times through or something like that. It has to keep repeating it.
And to go in an even higher level, how would you simplest describe a model?
So a model is, instead of programming traditionally all of my conditions, machine learning is you have your data, which are like examples, music, images, whatever. And then the model, it is something that you just feed the data, the music through. And really it's just a bunch of trees or like multiplications that just learn how to like route things and weigh them.
Right.
Like it's this likely to go through this neuron.
Yeah.
And you just have these pathways.
And the model level is where the copyright argument comes in, right? That's like in the training of the said model is like, oh, did it ingest all YouTube videos, or did it ingest, like when you hear people talking about, because that's where the music industry or the big three or the RIA, et cetera, is going to try to stop the music AI programs that are coming out right now, is because, the model is learning from data that is this copywritten music.
Right. That's what's new about this way of programming is it just writes its own rules based on the data.
Yeah.
So you need the data. You can't just like have a music theory textbook to write all the rules.
Right.
That's kind of the big question right now in the world of copyright. But before that, also there's a question of like, well, like, do we look at the outputs? Like maybe the inputs is okay, but let's look at the outputs. Like, it makes something that sounds pretty much exactly like what you trained it on.
You can memorize.
It memorized it.
Yes.
It's like, well, I mean, that's kind of just like sampling,
Right.
right? Maybe we should treat it as like sampling.
Yeah.
But if it makes something that kind of extracts these general concepts like the rhythm or composition of the genre, but doesn't sound like a sample, sounds like it could be anyone else in that genre. Like, do we treat that different?
Right.
Yeah. How creative is the output?
Right.
Yeah.
Which is how we look at music, copyright
Right.
anyway.
Exactly. Because when hip hop came out and was like creating sampling, there was no rules for that at the time, right? It was
Yeah,
like,
right.
how do you do this? Like,
Right.
what is this? It was human innovation.
Yeah, it's
Right.
even golden age of hip hop.
Now imagine if when sampling came with the golden age of hip hop, if the music industry came out and said no sampling allowed for the history of music. Like music would forever, we wouldn't be where we are today.
We wouldn't be where we are today. No.
You
Hip
know?
hop would stay underground.
Yeah.
That'd be underground. Yeah.
And they did, yeah. And they exactly, it would stay underground, couldn't be sold mainstream, couldn't do anything. But then the legalization and the monetization of sampling has actually created a ton of money for musicians, right? So once they actually made the framework and the structure from something that was once illegal, being sampling, now there's obviously the musician or the songwriter or whatever, whoever owns that sample, making money from other people using it, or now they're all the way to modern day sample platforms like Splice. Right, that everyone is now using, and sampling is just a thing that you do, period. Like almost everyone is using samples in some level, whether even if they're like a singer-songwriter that's not going to like sample a drum beat or something, but they may take a snare drum sample and put it over the snare drum that was recorded or added. So it's crazy to think like, where are we going to be in 10 years with AI music? Like, I don't see it actually being stopped. Right. No. So then do you have any ideas of what the AI music world could be like in 5 to 10 years when there's actually rules and guidelines around it?
That's a really great question. Yeah. And kind of, been the focus of the week for sure. I feel like, however, trepidation that a lot of people feel today, like AI is going to be very normal for our kids growing up in it. It's going to be very normal. And I feel like no matter what, we're kind of end up in the same place 5-10 years, in my opinion. Zach, love to hear.
What do you mean end up in the same place?
End up in the same place.
As like where we are right now, or as what sampling did?
I think you're saying depending on the different outcomes that regulators decide on, there will still be, it'll come to some area where there is like the more pirated illegal stuff. There's stuff that's paying people fairly, and it's almost like coffee. It's like there's like fair trade coffee and there's not fair trade coffee, but like maybe I want to buy fair trade coffee because I feel like that's more ethically right for me to do. Right. I think there will be ways that people will think about how they're spending their time listening. And like ultimately we are in charge of what we want to listen to. People have this fear that we'll be flooded by like crap content. And we'll never find anything good from humans that we want to listen to anymore. But I mean, that's on us as listeners too.
I think almost like ethically, I feel like the underground should be allowed to experiment. Like in the non-commercial realm, like art, just let art be art. Otherwise we wouldn't have Banksy and hip hop and that kind of thing.
Banksy is another great example.
But then like once you're in the commercial space and there's money at stake. Then it's a whole other discussion.
Especially if you're a company making a product that isn't just the music. Right. Like if you're just an artist using these tools, well, you're just making a song. That's pretty cool. But I can see how it could be very exploitative too. If you're not paying back anyone who has actually contributed to making your tool great.
But you said something really interesting, because when it comes down to it, and this is the same for any product or anything that ever happens, is the consumer decides if something stays or not, right? Like if the average person is listening to a ton of AI music will stay. If the average person listens to zero AI music, it will go away because there will be no market. And if there's no market, it goes away, or it just stays in the underground.
Right.
I guess that's a good way to calm someone that may be fearful of like, well, it's like, well, if humans want it, it'll be around, and if humans don't want it, it won't be around.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, what's the value
until we
to
get
you?
into AGI, and that's a whole other combo. But
Robots
yeah.
listening to robots or
yeah,
something.
yeah.
Right.
We'll come back in a year. Come back in a year.
That's a very different world.
Yeah, we'll get to that. So this podcast is like listened to by a lot of musicians, songwriters, producers, like engineers, etc. Like music professionals and people that are aspiring music professionals, like the main listeners. So what would you say to our listener that may be nervous about AI music?
I think it depends what your role is. If you're a producer working to make pop music, then there could be parts of your process that are either just like totally impossible without a huge budget. Like, I want to bring a choir in. Like, how do I actually hire this whole choir? What if I need edits on that choir?
Yeah.
Would an AI choir where the lead singer is driving it be enough?
Yeah.
And would that actually like make really cool music? And it's just like an effect. Like, we have chorus effects, we have flanger effects.
Yeah.
It's just a more realistic effect.
Yeah.
That you're enhancing your voice with. I mean, I think that's something that will be available all over very soon, just in regular workflows. And like, we might not even call that AI music. That's just an effect in music. And then if you're a sound designer, if you're an instrumentalist and you do session work or you make sample packs, you mentioned like Splice. I mean, there's an obvious next step with Splice to allow those to be not just the data set, but generated based on everything that Splice already has, for example.
They're doing that.
The COSO.
Yeah.
Right.
COSO, and now they're just calling it Create.
And Create. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there are all these ways that companies could create distribution, new chains of ways to release like the extra assets in music that you have lying around on your hard drive that you haven't really done much with from your work in progress. And maybe somebody else can find that really beneficial, and the companies can give you a revenue split, and it's just like royalties, 50-50 royalty split, just like any other maybe.
Yeah. There's probably new ways to make money, especially on your the samples and like your B-rolls and all that. And we do this a lot for music producers. Like, they'll hand us their 100 gigs of samples, train a model on it, and even just train it on the file paths, because that's already semantically organized. And then they just type in a file path that doesn't exist. Now they have new samples, do combinations of samples, do this kind of editing. That's possible.
Mr. Bill gave us tons of stuff.
Oh yeah, I love Mr. Bill.
He's a great sound designer, and he's all in on just like creating these digital clones of himself and licensing them out to companies because other people want his sound design.
Yeah.
And it's somewhere between sampling and synthesis.
Yeah.
It's right in between them. So we like to call it like neurosynthesis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another thing that you can do that's an interesting use case that I don't think the average musician is thinking about right now for AI is that, you could feed the model all your own things, like you're saying that producer's doing, not even to sell to others, but for you to get ideas that sound like you for yourself.
Right. That's right.
To break through any sort of writer block or producer block or whatever it may be, you could train the model on all of your data, on all of your music, not for anyone else to have but you, for then you to be making.
Yeah.
Or even if you're just taking it as a song starter.
Right.
Oh, here's just an idea. I'm going to build on that. No, I'm going to build on it. Or you just make something. What will be happening is artists and producers are going to be doing that. And the AI will get so good that you may have a big producer with their own LLM, their own model, where they could then just have it make its own music that sounds like you, and it's good enough to where you do just release it and don't even say that it is made with AI, but it sounds like you, and you're putting your stamp on it.
Right.
Yeah,
Right. And I mean, we've been working with bands to like even make these models that mood board for them.
Yeah.
This is one band that came to us. They're like, hey, we're trying to make this new group. It's a super group, and we're trying to hone in on this style that's a mix of like mathcore and 80s synth rock. But we're having trouble imagining what those like two very different styles might sound like together in one project. And so like, okay, let's see if we can create prototypes of that sound.
That's super interesting. Wait, can we talk more about that? So like having the AI help identify what is in your head. Like, okay, I want to make a band that's metal and synth pop or whatever. What could that sound like? And then like dialing it in more and more, prototyping with the AI. So then you can go, you're like, there's the sound. And then you go and actually make it yourself.
That's right.
That's super interesting.
Yeah. Because like style creation, it's like you're solving a jigsaw puzzle in your mind. You're like, like, you know,
Yeah.
what instruments do we do? How do we mix it? Like, what should the song structures be like? And it's not always, juxtaposition is usually not the answer.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you don't want to just bounce between two styles, section to section.
Yeah.
That's a little shallow. So yeah, that doesn't work either. And then there's like a huge art to hybridizing things because certain things just don't lend themselves to other things.
Yeah.
What's good about one style could be counterintuitive for another style, and finding those overlaps, it's very difficult. And yeah, probability with these models is actually a good way to explore that, even across cultures that never mixed before.
Right. It's wild. Some other things that I've been hearing about in terms of just giving the listener more ideas of how to use AI is I've been hearing certain producers telling me that they'll use one of the AI platforms, whether it's going to be Dadabots or it's Suno or Udio or any of these platforms. So like instead of crate digging, right? Instead of like digging through vinyls looking for samples or whatever, you could just have the AI make something you're looking for, an old blues sound or whatever it is. Take that, use that audio as the sample, and then actually just sample it, edit it, tweak it, flip it, do whatever you want, the same way you would, but you don't have to clear a license, right? Like you can own that. So that's really interesting, is using it just as the sample alone that you then manipulate yourself to make yours as if it was a sample from a record.
There's a whole like sub style of music of just like hyper sampling.
Yeah.
From like DJ Shadow doing, you know, all samples to the entire breakcore genre, basically. And when like sampling becomes so easy across all the genres, like for us, and I was like, how many genres can we cram into 3 minutes?
Yes, dude.
Right? So
talk about that piece, because you guys played me a piece of music that had a ton of genres crammed into 3 minutes.
Yes, that's right. So for
Genre canon.
Genre canon.
Genre canon.
I think it goes to like 7 or 8 genres. It's like 80 samples.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, you know, like we every now and then we come up with like a joke genre. Even just asking the audience the other day, like come up with genres, and there's like a dozen new things that don't exist.
Yeah.
Like, coming up with genres is a creative act, and it's like, well, okay, instead of just making a whole project, let's just put all of them into one track.
I really wanted to hear triumphant jazz.
Triumphant jazz.
I feel like that would make me super happy. Oh, so then when we became friends the other night, so we were talking about metal and everything, and then so CJ the next day, which is really great, came up to me and was like, hey man, I made something for you. After we met, I went back to my hotel room and was thinking, whoa, what would it sound like if Dillinger, Escape Plan, and Skrillex were mashed together?
Yeah, they had a baby, yeah.
What would Dillinger, Escape Plan, and Skrillex having a baby sound like? So he made it using his AI. I haven't yet listened to it. Let's listen to it right now.
We're gonna listen to it right now.
All right.
Okay, so
Tell me about
I would,
it.
but before you listen to it, I would set all expectations at the door.
Yeah.
Set all expectations at the door. Because it's not going to sound like one or the other.
Yeah.
It's not going to sound like really a juxtaposition of them either. It's something in the middle.
Yes.
That kind of has some elements.
Inspiration from both.
Amazing. Yeah. And then CJ also handed me a micro USB and was like, here it is. There's 50 songs. I'm like, oh, you made 50 songs of it?
Yeah, it was like 3 hours. I listened through all of it.
3 hours, dude.
Yeah, I listened 3 hours. I listened through all of it, and then I found my like favorite parts, and then I just arranged them. And there was like 9 minutes. I'm like, no, less is more. So I just brought it down to 5 minutes. So,
nice.
Yeah.
All right, let's listen to a little bit of it. And what did you call it?
Skrillinger.
Skrillinger. All right, we're going to listen to it for the first time. That's it. Oh, sickest part. Whoa. There's real moments in that is actually Skrillex meets Dillinger and what it would actually be. That I should send to Skrillex and have him be like, just like, yo, check this out. You would love it. It's heavy, dude. It's such a cool thing. It's great for ideas. Once again, amazing for ideas. It's kind of mind blowing because that would take so long to have to put together if you were trying to really make that.
Right. And I'm also not sure like what is the ideal combination of them.
Yeah.
Because in my mind, I hear like multiple different ways to do it. I mean, either I want to hear the complexity of like 140 bass music, but instead it's all this intricate guitar work and rhythm and percussion like within that framework, like and it sounds like a mathcore band produced, or I want the opposite, where I want the crazy additive polyrhythm time signatures of Dillinger and the chaos and the constant surprise, but it sounds completely like electronic production, serum, et cetera, and it's like or I want both, and how would these things dance with each other anyway? Because they're from two different worlds, but they have the similar like feeling of surprise and elation and adrenaline.
How was that made? Like, what is that? Does the model have Dillinger in it and Skrillex in it, or like, and then it just makes decisions and chops? Like, how was that?
Yeah,
how was it made?
I mean, it has tons of music that it's heard, and so it knows how to combine things beyond just those two artists. Right. It's pulling from every piece of music it's ever heard, but then trying to encourage it to be like Dillinger, to be like Skrillex.
And what we found is that like the fusion ability is better, like the wider, richer range of diversity that the model has seen in general. Because like style is a universe of stars, and style doesn't exist in a vacuum isolated. It exists relative to other things.
Right. Yeah. Like if you have Dillinger, if Skrillex, it's like, well, okay, so the point in between, if it's never heard any music other than those two, there's nothing there. Yeah. Right. So it seems like it can find these in-between spaces easier when it's heard lots of music.
I think there's a couple different ways to look at it. Like I kind of break it down to like singers, songwriters, musicians, being a drummer, guitarist, whatever, and then a producer. How do you think AI, like if we were to isolate each one, like what is AI, do you think, going to do to songwriters in the next few years?
Oh yeah, great question. And yeah, as us being a little bit of all of that, like it's like there's fun to be had by taking each of those kind of to a new direction. And so like one of these things, we're trying to find the style of like of us being like a strings and drums ensemble, band. Right. And we've been in like bands of all the existing genres, like played black metal, metalcore, mathcore, skate punk, blah blah blah. And it's like, well, if we're gonna do a live band again, it should be something like a very unique sounding that hasn't been done in a live setting yet. And this is kind of like a search. We're trying to search for what that would be. The prototyping, I think, helps songwriting in that regard.
Songwriting, so really humans could actually be even better songwriters from the idea seeking using AI tools.
Because I know when I sit down to write a song, like I am pulling on like my training data, the things that I tend to listen to.
Other music.
Yeah. And also I like certain habits that I kind of will get stuck in, and like maybe there's music out there I just haven't heard yet. I've never even considered like, oh wait, you could do that.
Yeah.
So songwriter on the creation side, that makes sense for them. What about musicians, session players, drummers?
Oh, okay.
I mean, it seems great for drummers because like we already play along to tracks, practicing by ourselves. Like practicing drums without any other music is a little bit empty feeling sometimes. You're just doing like rudiments or something. And I mean, we're not real time yet. This takes like 15 seconds to make a song. But if we had something that could kind of play along with you or predict what you're about to do, that's what I'm trying to build toward as a drummer myself. I want to just kind of, it's like drum triggers are able to like enhance your drums like a guitar pedal can for guitarists. We're getting that as drummers now. And I was doing shows that way, but it's really tedious to like program all your, patterns on like the tom. I was going to alternate these arpeggios or something. And I just want that to be probabilistic and able to be easily pivoted to any other thing that I want.
Wow. So you as a drummer could be practicing in your basement or whatever with headphones on and actually improvising with the AI and it's following you.
I mean, that's like my North Star I'm seeking.
Oh my God. That'd be so fun. Yeah, because like I mean, think about the hours and whatever 10,000 hours I've drummed alone, and then the 10,000 hours I've drummed with a band, and then the 10,000 hours that I've drummed, or even I plug my V drums into my iPhone and I just listen to a song that I like and drumming to it or whatever it may be. But oh my God, to be able to as a drummer play along to an AI that's doing what I want it to do, or if I'm like, hey. It's essentially your friend, right? It's your companion. It's your companion that's super talented. So if you want to play like, hey, I want to do a Van Halen sounding thing, or I want to play like Pharrell style beats, but on real drums and like play bass lines that match that. And you could just be playing to that. That would be incredibly fun. Wow.
Yeah. They know all kinds of music.
Wow. And it would also make people incredible drummers. You'd probably get better because you'd be playing more because you'd probably be encouraged to get more fun you have the more you play typically, and then you get better.
And that's not better than playing with your friends, but sometimes your friends aren't there and you want to practice drums.
Sometimes your friends aren't there. When COVID, COVID 2028 happens, and oh God, I don't even want to say that, but. Yeah, which is funny because being a drummer, I always want to play with people. I get real bored playing alone. I'm not the guy. I'm not like disciplined enough to just like practice my rudiments. Like I was when I was a kid, but not for the last 15 years. And I stopped drumming when COVID happened because people weren't around. Yeah, and I didn't want to play alone. And I've had a hard time restarting. It's been like 4 years now. Like, because I only want to play with humans, and I got rid of my studio that I had. So if I would have had this AI jam companion to improvise with me while I'm playing, that could have kept my spark.
Keep your chops up.
Yeah, keep my chops up.
We built one of those for the beatboxer Reaps one.
Yeah.
And so, the earliest model was very good at beatboxing.
Yeah.
And so we just trained it on him, and then he practices with it.
So you could essentially like trade fours?
You can trade fours, yeah.
Oh my God, dude. Imagine. That's crazy. So he could be like, and then it'll do something. Okay, well, you actually beatbox. You could trade. That's crazy. Also, as a drummer, to be able to trade fours with an AI.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
exactly. Say the AI does something a little bit more gnarly than you were thinking of doing, and you're like, oh shit.
Let me try that.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Once again, an AI companion. The friend that you can shed with.
A trainer.
Yeah, a trainer.
Yeah.
He calls it second self.
Wow. Second self, yeah. That's crazy. Okay, and then what about producers?
Oh, I feel like producers are the
first adopters.
The first adopters.
Yeah. They seem to be.
They stand to gain the most.
Yeah.
Also, the first people that readily wanted to collaborate with us.
Yeah.
Because you're already working with samples.
You're already on the computer all the time.
On the computer, yeah.
You already spend most of your time alone, and then the humans come, and you're like, all right, cool.
Yeah, it's all just software to them either way.
Hey, I know I won't say the name, but I know of an A-list producer that how he's using AI right now is he is taking a sample from one of the platforms. He makes something, make me a beat in 120 BPM that sounds like Dilla meets Phoenix. I don't know, whatever, and then like it comes out. And then he has studio musicians there in the room. And so he'll play them the AI song and be like, play along to it. So then they all play on it. And he's like, cool, there it is. There's the vibe I'm going for. Now vamp. And then they'll vamp. And then he'll grab moments and samples. And then there's your song. So once again, using the AI as a idea that you then give to the humans for the humans to take it to the next level and sound better.
That's right. Yeah, it's like it's just communicating better.
Yeah, it's getting your idea out easier. Yeah, as the producer.
Right.
This is wild. See, for these things, I actually think these are human tools. Like this is actually helpful to humans. This is not replacing humans.
It's all humans. Yeah.
Yeah, but okay. So back to your tagline.
Yeah.
So obviously you guys are comedic. I think that's part of being metalheads. It's kind of like I think the harder the metal is, the more you're actually just clowning people.
Yeah.
I actually asked that to Jimmy Jam. I had Jimmy Jam on this podcast, and I asked him because there are certain breaks that he would do on the drum machine with Janet Jackson that are like, "What is that?" And I was like, were you just clowning people?" And he was like, "It's funny that you say it like that. No one's ever referred to it that way, but." Yes.
Yeah. Actually, most of our ideas start as jokes. Actually, that's how there's so many.
That's true.
How do we decide what to do? It's like if it makes me laugh, if we're like cracking up about it,
it's worth trying to
Yeah,
build it.
let's go and do it.
So taking humans out of music is like obviously kind of joking. It's like both. It's obviously also serious.
It's also serious because you're not at band practice. For us, we were developing these models, so we were learning calculus and stuff like that, and Python coding, and getting used to running GPUs in the cloud and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm like sitting on a computer all day, and I'm like, wait, like 2 years later, I'm like, what, wasn't I trying to make music? And I'm just like, what happened to that?
2 years later, it's like, oh shit.
So let me make this album called "Can't Play Instruments" Volume 1.
Hardcore album.
Yeah.
And all the song titles are like,
it's like I heard my calluses are so soft it hurts to turn the amp on.
You guys are so different to, like, let's say the founder and CEO of Suno, and I think Suno is like, he's built something really, incredible, and the UI is very simple to use and everything. But he's not a musician, and he told me, he's like, I'm not making Suno for musicians. I'm making Suno so my mom can use it, and people who don't make music can now make music, which is completely different, I think, from you guys. Right? You guys are creating AI to make the most extreme music possible, to create things that have never been heard, not to make. Suno's more like, oh, make me a country song for my mom that'll make her cry and be happy or whatever. Yeah. You guys are like creating new genres, going crazier than humans can go, creating songs that are never ending, that have been continually generated since 2019, and also thinking of all these different ideas of real, actually, like, aids to humans. Here's how to make you better. Here's how to give you more ideas for you to build off of. So that's really interesting to me. So even though your tagline is gnarly, I actually think there's a soft spot in you guys and you're both you're both actually musicians. You're a drummer and a guitar player. So it's just completely different.
Right. So it's kind of like bringing up the bottom of music that never even had access to making music. But then there's also ways to just push like what virtuosity in music can be with this too, I think. And that excites us.
Man. So like, what else, like, where do you see Dadabots in 5 years?
Ooh. One of these arcs is like speed.
Yeah.
The speed of making something. To move at the speed of meme.
Yeah.
Right. If someone, right. If even on this podcast, and maybe we'll come back in 5 years and we'll achieve this. Even on this podcast, say, Elmo, you come up with a joke.
Yeah.
And I'm like, we just go, here we go, and do it, and we listen to it. Right. That. And
that is amazing.
Right. And this
people will use that all the time for comedic reasons.
Yeah. Exactly. And it's just kind of been playing out at we did a live tour of Europe, doing like live AI DJing. We call it prompt jockeying, where we have
prompt jockeying.
Yeah, every show it's always different. We don't know what we're gonna do until we're there. And then once we're in the venue, we feel the vibe. We meet the people. We hear the other bands that are there. We start, come up with inside jokes, and then all of that coalesces into what music gets played. And then we put our phone number up on the screen, and people can text in requests for genres or whatever they want to hear, right? Yeah. And we're just like,
it's fun. It's inclusive of the audience and everything. Right. That was what I liked too about at the dinner the other night. You were like asking the audience to help create what will be heard.
Yeah, and we like metal and punk and noise and free jazz, but there are all these other kinds of musics that we like that we just aren't experts in, and bringing everybody else into it is always a great way, whether we're partnering with the audience or partnering with an actual band.
Yep. And another one of our big missions is like open source. Yeah. So releasing free open code to the underground.
Yeah.
And just rising up. Those people, those musicians who are inspired enough to learn how to use code and like Python and all that. And we're always very elated when we just hear out of nowhere like someone's using our model or fine tuning it. Recently, we saw Flostradamus fine tuned one of our models. To make trap music.
Nice.
And it was like, wow, that's one of the best fine tunes I've ever heard of our
model. That's
awesome.
And that's what's so cool about the open source approach is that anyone can just take it and make it what personal thing they want.
How they want it to be. It's really interesting.
A pretty awesome outcome.
What's something you want someone listening to this to take away from hearing this podcast?
Like you're saying about the fist.
Yeah.
Study the fist.
Yeah. Pay attention.
Slow it down in slow motion. Understand the kinetics involved. Go and try. It doesn't hurt to familiarize yourself with something new. and you'll just be better off with it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's also not really intelligent. It's just music plus probability.
Yeah.
So like our friend Rainia Portrait XO, she had some talk. She was calling it artificial stupidity. It's cool to just embrace the stupidity of it because we love glitch music.
Yeah.
And breaking things and making glitch is awesome.
That's amazing. Well, thank you guys for being on the show.
Oh, thanks, Elmo.
Great to meet you this week. I'm excited to see what you guys continue to build, and I really want you to make the AI that I can just drum along to.
Yeah.
And improvise. Oh my God, and just have fun with. I would play for hours.
I know, me too.
When we have it, we'll call you up.
Yeah, I'll call you up.
You'll be the first to play with it.
Let me go. I'm gonna be an advisor.
Yeah.
Let's go. Dadabots, everybody.
With Elmo.
Make some
Go
noise.
with Elmo. Go 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 with Elmo. This is the stuff, man.
Music AI. Don't be scared. Look at it before it punches you in the face. Pay attention. Pay attention.